Today, you are going to discover how to truly master your emotions. You may have heard of emotional intelligence before or have some understanding of its importance. Being in charge of your emotions is vital for success and happiness in relationships, but not in the way that you think. By having top-level emotional intelligence, you'll become completely unreactive to her tests. You'll eradicate all neediness and anxiety that pushes her away. By the power of your confident feeling in yourself, you'll make her certain that you are the man. Yet if you fail to understand the role of your emotions and how to properly use them, they will guide your life day in, day out, making you a passenger of your past trauma, doomed to repeat the heartbreak, destined for those too ignorant to master them. People out there will tell you that simple information on how to master your emotions is good enough, like using the 7 tips for emotional intelligence. It's not, and it never will be. That's why at the end of this video, I'm going to give you actionable steps to take to slowly gain control, not just of your emotions, but your entire being. A method I've been using with my clients that has helped save hundreds of marriages. Okay, let's first discuss the role of emotions. What are emotions? I'm sure you have a basic understanding of what they are, but from the most fundamental perspective, emotions are simply energy that moves inside of you. To understand them better, let's look at an object like this book I'm holding. It feels solid when you touch it, right? But if you could see up close with a microscope, you would find it's mostly empty space with tiny particles inside. Emotions are a bit like that, but instead of being solid or empty, they have their own special vibe or energies. They help you in difficult situations like getting things you need or staying safe. Think of emotions as helpful signals that guide you. Just like road signs help you find your way when you're driving, they are signposts for survival. Let's imagine a person who is feeling anxious, like having butterflies in your stomach. Imagine you send a text message to your partner, but you've noticed they seem a bit distant lately. Normally they'd reply quickly, but now it takes them longer. Your brain, which looks out for danger, starts to worry. It thinks, oh no, they might leave me. You see, our brains have an old way of thinking from when people needed to stick together to survive. Back then, being abandoned was really scary. Nowadays we're more connected, but our brains still act in the same way. So when your partner doesn't text back quickly, your brain reacts as if you're facing real danger, like running into a tiger or a bear. It triggers your fight or flight response, making you feel anxious and stressed. Even though you know it's not the same as a real threat, your brain can't tell the difference. So when your partner doesn't text back, it feels like a big problem, causing anxiety. Now, anxiety might not feel good, but it has a hidden superpower. It gives you a burst of energy, like when you're excited to do something fun. Anxious people often want to take action, like solving a puzzle. So even though it seems negative, anxiety can be helpful in a way. It's like your brain's way of saying, let's go and do something about this. And here's the important part. It's okay to feel these emotions. In fact, it's a sign of being smart about your feelings. Some people think they should get rid of all their emotions like anger or guilt, but that's not true. Every emotion has a good reason behind it. The first step in controlling your emotions is to realize this. When you feel anxious, don't panic. Instead, ask yourself, what is my anxiety trying to teach me? What is it trying to tell me? I'll teach you this later as well, but if you could separate yourself from your anxiety and have a conversation with it, what does it want you to do? Is it helpful? Is there a better way to deal with the situation? This takes practice because sometimes emotions want to take over and make decisions for you. That's when you feel like you're riding a roller coaster, holding on tight. But with practice, you can learn to understand your emotions and not let them take control. That's why when tough situations come along, you won't feel like you're going to fall apart. In the end, you'll learn how to have a conversation with those anxious feelings and make better decisions. It's like having a chat with a part of yourself that's worried, and you'll discover that you can handle things even when your heart is scared. How can we learn to control our emotions? Let's begin with a quote that's really insightful about emotions. There was a man named Viktor Frankl who survived a very tough time in history, the Holocaust. He was also a psychologist. He came up with his own way of understanding the mind called logotherapy. His words help us see just how powerful emotions are and how we can control them. He said between every stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Now let's take that quote and replace stimulus with and response with emotion and action. Between every emotion and action, there's a space. You see, a lot of our time, our emotions make us act without thinking. Let's say you felt really hurt when your mom seemed distant, but when you showed your feelings, you got some comfort in return. This happens quickly and with no pause. Think about it like this. When anxiety hits, you might react without control. If your wife doesn't text you back, she's talking to another guy. She says these things about you. She's criticizing you. React, react, react. No space in between. And over time, these automatic reactions shape who we are. So what we're trying to do here is increase that space between what we feel and what we do. Because in that moment, you can choose to do something different. And by making new choices, you become a new and better version of yourself. One of my clients, James, had experienced this firsthand. His communication with his wife had diminished over the years as they never made time for each other. She had hinted on many occasions that she was unhappy. James assumed it was because they were so busy, first with the kids being so young, then his promotion at work and putting in more hours. There was always something that needed more time. Until resentment built up so much that an argument over taking out the garbage erupted into an emotional firestorm. James lost his temper and raised his voice, something he would do when he got anxious. His wife told him that she wanted space. This was a tough pill for James to swallow. Though he had to admit the writing was on the wall. She had already been going out more often with her friends, she'd stayed out later and later, was texting on her phone more. James wondered if there was another man in the picture. When James found out she was messaging another guy, he became an emotional wreck. It made perfect sense why she wanted space. The thought of her being emotionally invested in another man was heartbreaking. This guy lived far away, so it was only a matter of time before things got physical. Desperate for change, James reached out to us, and I've been helping him master his emotion. He's been observing his breath every day like clockwork, especially when the anxiety takes over him. He's experienced a big win recently. His wife was taking a trip, and on that trip she was going to visit the other man. She must have expected James to lose it, to get fired up and lose his temper like he'd done so many times before. But he didn't act out, nor did he try to convince her not to go. He held his masculine frame, and even though he was anxious for a whole 3 days, he put space between himself and his anxiety and allowed his masculinity to take the lead. When his wife came home, she told him that she didn't want to be with the other guy, that she wanted to work on their marriage. This was huge, and of course, many factors are involved in such a turn of events, but the biggest one being the changes that James had made to himself. So what was it about breathing that helped James in that moment when it counted so much? Just close your eyes for a moment, take a deep breath in through your nose, and then breathe out slowly through your mouth. You know how it feels on the inside is closely linked to how your body feels. Sometimes when athletes get nervous before a big game or match, they feel that anxiety in their stomach and have to run to the bathroom. That's because our feelings can affect our bodies. Being aware of these feelings is important. In our culture, we focus a lot on thinking with our brains. Your brain is critical, but we shouldn't forget about the rest of our bodies. Other parts like your stomach and your heart have their own wisdom. You can connect with these feelings to learn more about yourself. One of the ways to do this is to pay attention to how your body feels when you're feeling different emotions. When you focus on your stomach or your heart, it it can give you different messages, which can be more truthful. This is helpful because anxiety can make you think things are worse than they really are. But by listening to your body, you can really understand the real truth. When you understand yourself better, you can navigate the world around you more effectively. You can learn to grow, heal, and love more deeply. And guess what? Your breath plays a big part in how you feel. When you're anxious, your breath becomes short and quick. So if you take a slow, deep breath, it can help you feel less anxious. I remember a story one of my clients told me. He was a musician, a guitarist, and often played gigs. He was used to being in front of crowds of all sizes, yet one time in front of a medium-sized crowd, a situation he'd been in many times before, his heart started racing right before he took the stage. His breath increased so much he had trouble breathing. It felt like his throat had tightened up. He was overcome with fear and had no idea what was going on. Luckily, there was just enough time before he took to the stage for his nerves to settle. That was the first time he'd experienced a panic attack. It came out of nowhere. Through exploration, he'd learned it was likely his insecurities, an internal feeling of incompetency that piled up and revealed themselves through performance anxiety. With practice, he learned to step away from the anxiety and see it from an external point of view, to take deep, relaxed breaths and give himself positive affirmations in that moment. He saw the anxiety for what it is and created space between it and his reaction to it. Your breath is a wonderful thing. It's something your body does automatically, even when you're not paying attention. You may not notice it 99% of the time, but you have control over it. And this control can help you manage your feelings. We should remind ourselves to practice controlling our breath at least once a day. This practice can help us become more aware of how we breathe throughout the day. For example, when you're upset or frustrated with somebody like your partner, your body reacts by making your chest feel tight, your heart races, and your breathing becomes shallow. But you can change this by taking a deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. Now, does this sound like a relaxing breath? No, it doesn't. But does this? Nice and slow. Breathing is a way can help you feel more relaxed. There's a book called Breath by James Nestor. It talks about the importance of breathing through your nose and out through your mouth, and science supports this method. Some people even tape their mouths shut at night to encourage nose breathing. Though that might be extreme for most of us, but breathing through your nose can help calm you down and see things differently. Your emotions play a big role in how you see the world. Your feelings affect your perspective, and your perspective affects your emotions. It's a cycle. For example, when your partner is upset with you, no matter what you do, it's filtered through her emotions. Now, you can't control her feelings, but you can manage your own. Don't let her negativity affect you. Being in control of your emotions is one of the best ways to stay grounded. You can achieve this by paying attention to your breath and your perceptions. When you find yourself in an emotional situation, you can pause, take a breath, and ask yourself how you see it. And what would a confident person do? This creates space between your emotions and your actions, which can lead to positive change. So remember to focus on your breath when things get tough. Even if you're anxious, it's going to be okay. Let's look at an example of anxiety I mentioned earlier. When your wife doesn't reply to your messages, your anxiety can create all sorts of negative thoughts like, oh, she's seeing someone else, she doesn't like me anymore, is she looking at my messages and actually ignoring it? She's fallen out of love with me. Maybe she even said she was out of love with you, which makes it even worse. But let's pause and say, how are you perceiving this? And is there a new perception that we can adapt from a calm state that is more helpful towards what you want? Because when you're in a state of anxiety, you're focused on what you don't want, what you're afraid of, and what you're pushing away. and what you focus on will manifest and create more fear. If you respond to her and you send her a bloody lecture on how you're sorry about what you've done, and you realize now that you were hurting for all these years and all this stuff, and you're sorry and you're sorry and you're sorry, and of little value, it's low value, an apex male will say, okay, she's not responding to me. She's playing hard to get. She's testing me to see if I will react. So instead, I can choose not to say anything back to her. Let her come to me. Or I can craft a simple message saying, hey, seems like you're busy. I'm here to talk whenever you're ready. And then you continue on with your day. As much as that goes against what you want and what you feel in the moment, over time, these actions will influence your emotions. It all starts with changing your perspective, and that change begins with self-awareness, which is a habit you must develop. Most people live on autopilot, letting their emotions dictate their actions. This is because our emotions are wired to keep us safe, not necessarily happy. It's time to change that story because it comes from these nice guy tendencies. And if you want to watch the video right here on those nice guy tendencies that you can also overcome, I highly recommend on clicking that. Also, if you are committed to improving your relationship, you can set up a free call with our marriage evaluating team. We're a team that can help you get your woman back in your life, but be sure you're fully committed to the journey before you do so. You've got this, I believe in you, and I will see you in the next one.